Thanks for being here tonight. I hope you're having a good Sunday. I know the last few days have been quite crazy, for lack of a better word, regarding coronavirus and COVID-19 and all that. I've been spending a lot of time in my craft room, my creative escape, and watching some Netflix. Had a friend here crafting yesterday, but the news is just getting to be a little much for me, and I am starting to feel stir crazy. I'm staying at home, trying to do my part to lower that curve and stay healthy myself and keep other people healthy. But this could be a long bit, and hopefully everybody will just pull together and help and support one another. There's a lot of concern for various groups of people in regards to health. Yes, I'm in Ohio also. All the schools have been shut down. My oldest daughter is a teacher. She's very concerned about how she's going to be able to teach her students. And then she heard today the school closure may go through the end of the school year. I have a grad student studying physical therapy, and Emily is very concerned. She won't, they basically shut down the university to only online classes. But so much of her nursing, as well as my niece Allison's nursing program, is hands-on, and she's concerned. They're both concerned they won't have the skills they need. Emily starts a clinical May 18th, so she's concerned about that. Oh, Julie, you have a senior? Oh, I feel for you. That's really, really difficult. And that is something that crossed my mind. Well, I don't have a senior, and there are people who do have seniors, and they're concerned about, how they're going to celebrate and honor their student during these times. So whatever, I guess the only word of advice I have, which take it for what it's worth, I think we can just all pull together and help and support one another in any way we can. For example, my sister just texted me, do I have everything I need? We'll watch out for each other as well as our families. And I put a comment on my neighborhood Facebook group that if somebody needs help with daycare or watching kids so they can be at work and the kids are off school and whatever, I'll do what I can to help. If there's somebody who can't get to the store for whatever reason, maybe we can jump in and help out them. But I'm happy you're all here tonight. I think it'll be a good time for us to just take a break and have an escape from all the crazy news and the hoarding and just the constant bombardment of coronavirus everywhere we look, the radio, the TV, whatever. So let's have some fun tonight. I'm going to start by telling you that I have a whole list of things I want to do while I'm trying to keep myself healthy at home. And, reading books, new craft projects, whatever. And I tried my hand at a new stamping technique that has been on my mind and something I've been wanting to try for a very long time. And that is no-line watercoloring. So a few things went in the trash. And again, this is my first day of trying this technique, but this is something I completed just a little while ago, and I'm pretty proud of it. But I wanted to share it with you, even though I'm not an expert at this. I wanted to share with you the project and the technique and what I've learned about it. And I'm going to encourage you to give it a try and try something new along with me. So let's get started. All right, let's get started. I see some new names on here, and I see some familiar names. So welcome all. I am Mary Nabe of stampinpeace.com. I come to you from Westerville, Ohio, outside of Columbus. Schools, everything kind of closed down in Ohio, but we're all going to get through, and we're all going to be fine, and we're all going to come out stronger on the other side. Hopefully it won't be too many weeks out before that all begins to happen, but we are going to escape from all of that for a little while and enjoy some creative time together. As I said, I'm using some of this I won't say downtime because I do work at home, but using some of this time where I'm spending more time at home. And, oh, Julie, your sister lives in Delaware, not too far from me. Very nice. But anyways, using some of this extra time I'm spending at home trying to keep myself and everybody else healthy to try some new things, pull out some new stamp sets and projects that I've been wanting to work on and haven't. I've got a project going on upstairs with one of my favorite, let me see if I have any to show you, with one of my favorite designer series papers. Let me just pull a few of these out. And this was, it's a first time project for me, so it's upstairs, but I'm using some of these prints from the, what is it called? Perennial Essence Designer Series paper, which kind of has a Monet look to it, very artistic. And if you could see the paper up close, it even looks like, well, you can see what looks like canvas pattern, you know, as if these are painted directly on canvas, which kind of gives you a hint as to what I'm doing. But it's the first time I'm doing it, kind of a trial and error thing. For the most part, it went well, but I have to redo one part of it, so I hope to show you that later this week. But in the meantime, I used that Perennial Essence Designer Series paper kind of as the inspiration and push to try no-line watercoloring, a technique that I've seen many people do, but have never tried myself yet. So I did a few small practice things, and they kind of went in the trash today. But the last one I worked on was this, which is what I started with, but it turned out to be, I thought maybe I should try something else, like a bold flower or something. So I was just playing around, but this is what I ended up with. And I want to show you this because I've been quite intimidated by the no-line watercoloring technique for a long time, although I find it to be so beautiful when I see other people doing it. And I thought, you know what? You never know until you try. So I hope as you see me go through this process, this technique, that you will be inspired to also give it a try. We're using some very basic products from Stampin' Up, the watercolor paper, and I highly suggest that with this no-line watercoloring technique, you do it on the watercolor paper. This is a very high quality, nice watercolor paper. It's, you get 10 5x7 sheets, and quite honestly, I don't remember the cost of it. You know, I'm not $8. I really don't even remember. I'm sorry. I'll try to look it up before the video ends. And I'm also going to use aqua painters, which have been around a very long time, but one of my favorite coloring tools or watercoloring tools. They're called aqua painters because you simply remove the top and then you fill the tube with water under your kitchen sink or in your kitchen sink. You get 2 in a package, and one tip is quite a bit larger than the other. And because the images I'm going to be watercoloring are rather small and detailed, I'm going to be using only the one with the smaller tip. Fran, yes, I totally agree. In fact, I have some of that old watercolor paper, and I pulled that out first this afternoon to try the technique on and practice with that. And then I thought, well, I'm going to try the new and see. And I like the new so much better, especially for the no line watercoloring technique. So those are the basic supplies. My other supplies I'm using are simply ink pads. Now, I've pulled out a lot here and done a lot of different colors here. But depending on the image that you're watercoloring, you might only be using 2 stamp sets, 3. So don't get overwhelmed by that. It just so happens that because, the girls are 1, 2, 3 colors and the flowers are 2 different colors and then the sand and then the bird. That's why I have that many, okay? Do not get overwhelmed when I pull out all these different colors. Yes, you do get a better stamped image as well, Fran, on this new watercolor paper. And the watercolor paper is very much worth your investment. Unless you're planning to do something big, a big scene like this 5x7 and stick it in a frame, I cut mine in half. And when you cut it in half, you're going to get a piece that's 3.5 inches wide, and I might trim the top and bottom to make the size consistent with my card front size. This time I actually cut it, the Sahara sand that I have it backed on is the 3.5 by 4 3/4, and then my watercolor paper is just a little bit smaller than that at 3 3/8 by 4 5/8. Okay, so like I said, 10 sheets, 5x7, but if you cut them in half and use them this way, you get basically enough for 20 cards. So let's get started. The stamp set that I'm featuring is the Beautiful Moments stamp set, and what drew me to this stamp set and wanting to purchase it is I have 2 daughters. They are 28 and 23 now, wonderful young women, but this image, both of them reminded me of Andrea and Emily, but this one in particular, because Emily is 5 years younger than Andrea. So I can remember walking along with Andrea, and Andrea was always, good at, how should I say, not being mother hen, but yeah, maybe being mother hen, taking on Emily under her wing. She was always very proud of being a big sister, and I remember times them holding hands in the way Emily would look up to her, and that's really kind of cool, and they're great friends today. So this is the image that I'm going to work with today. This is what I would have put this on, but as you can see, I had a little too much water and I didn't give enough drying time. So some of my colors blended in places I didn't want them to blend. So the other reason I did not mount it to the card front was I wanted it to dry really well before I put maybe some blue sky in there. Lisa Johnson, thanks for sharing. I appreciate you being here. If anybody else would do some sharing, that would be awesome. I appreciate it so much. So the first step to no line watercoloring is to start with a very light color of ink pad. On this one, it does look like she's wearing stockings. That's all exactly what I thought, or tights or something. And I thought, well, I could get away with it, but her arm's a little messed up. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, I think it's a very good first attempt, considering I've never done any no-line watercoloring until late this afternoon. Probably 4:30, 5 o'clock when I decided I wanted to sit down and really give this a go. Completely different from what I thought I was going to be showing you tonight. But you want to start by doing your stamping with a very light color. Gray granite is what I'm using. Smoky slate would be a good choice. Sahara sand would be a good choice. Trying to think what else. And dependent, the color might even be dependent on what images you plan to stamp. Seaside spray, perhaps. There's all kinds of ones. Did I mention smoky slate, Sahara sand? Soft sea foam. That would be another great color. But I'm working with gray granite. So the first thing I'm going to, you do want to have scrap paper. I didn't grab another paper towel, but I'll be able to work with just the scrap paper. I would say, a paper towel or tissue and plenty of scrap paper will come in very handy. Now, when you stamp your image in this very light color, I'm doing a very light tap. I'm going to stamp off first, and then I'm going to stamp it on my watercolor paper. And you can see how very light it is. That's what I want for no line watercoloring. In fact, I could even go another stamped off, okay, which is what I think I'll do. That's what I did when I made my first one. 2, I'm gonna do 3 right here. Okay, so can you see how light that is? I stamped off twice. So as light as you can get it, but still being able to see the outline is really what you want. I am going to go ahead and stamp my my birds and my flowers as well. Stamp off. Birds I'm going to leave a little darker because I'm just going to stamp those off once because I had a little bit of a hard time seeing those because they were so small. And then I have this floral image that I'm going to add as well. Tap, tap, put one here. I'm going to do one a little bit lower. And then I'm going to do some on the left side as well. And it's okay if some of the images overlap. And really, you're finished with the stamping for right now, okay? So you can set those aside. I'm going to put this gray granite aside, and I'm going to start by coloring the dresses on the girls. Now, last time we did a watercolor project together, I had one of my big clear blocks and I put out dots of re-inker. You can do it that way as we did before, but this time I'm going to show you doing it this way. Just squeeze your ink pad and you'll get some of the ink on the lid of your ink pad. Now the first part, before you even go to the color, you want to brush over the area that you're going to put ink on first. Okay. And you're going to get that part of the paper wet or damp. And then I'm just going to pull in some ink. And I'm going to just I want to make sure you're seeing in the, yes, okay. I'm just going to let that ink spread. One thing that is important in this technique is that you give the different parts time to dry. You can see I did pretty well with letting the different parts time to dry, except right in this area. I went back in, I wanted a little bit deeper color on the little girl's dress. It was too wet and I ended up letting too many colors blend at once. Yes, Fran, that's another great tip. I'll show that in case somebody doesn't know what we mean. I just learned that from Kelly Atchison, and I had never thought of it. So here's another simple way to gather up ink. You just press a clear block into the ink pad and you pull your ink right from there. Now, before I go to the next part, here it doesn't really matter because the big girl's dress is also going to be the same color, but it's okay. I suggest you still wipe your aqua painter on a paper towel or scrap paper before you go to the next part. That way you'll never forget to wipe it off if you're switching colors. This particular time I'm not switching colors for the dress. Filling in that top part and then the skirt part of her dress. The wonderful thing about no line watercoloring and just watercoloring in general is the images or the colors are meant to be blended together. And it's just, it doesn't have to be perfect. We let the water do the work for us and the ink just spread across. We just kind of dab it in place. Maybe even move that ink around a little bit. But for the most part, it is the water we started with, the water we've already put on the watercolor paper that is doing the work for us. And by the way, I know there are a lot of people staying home with school children over the next few weeks or their grandchildren, maybe taking more kids into their home daycare. I will be giving out some suggestions in the coming days and weeks of some stamping projects that you can do with younger crafters. Okay, and of course, most anything we do in stamping can be adapted to be made easier or harder, and can be adapted or adjusted to different age levels and such. Now, before I go in with my petal pink for the skin color, I'm going in the hair, I'm going to let these parts dry. And I'm going to go to some of the ones, some of the parts, images, where they're not touching my Highland Heather color. So right now I'm just going to flip this and I'm going to do the birds. And again, just drag the tip of your aqua painter over the stamped part, and then very lightly with the tip of my aqua painter, I'm going to dab on some of this basic gray color. And oops, I need to clean that. And then let the paper and the water I've already put down draw in that ink color and spread it and such. And again, now that these birds might not look quite the same as if I had just stamped them and done nothing else with them. They might not look the same as if I had actually drawn them in with perhaps a colored pencil. But remember, this is watercolor. It's okay if it's not an exact shape. Understand what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to set basic gray aside. And I'm putting ink pads everywhere. Okay, I need to keep them together in case they are colors I want to go back to. Now I'm going to work on the flowers. So I'm going to work on the stems first with soft seafoam. I squeezed my pads before when I was doing the first one. So I'm just going to drag the tip of my aqua painter wherever I see one of the stems or a leaf that I stamped. Okay, this is the stamped image. I'll set that there so to remind you what it actually is, because I know it's difficult to see when the stamping is so light, but we need it to be that light. And honestly, doing the no-line watercoloring, it sort of takes off it's less pressure than I thought it might be. Some of the pressure is actually removed because we allow the colors to blend and that sort of thing. Oh, Michelle, hello. I'm in Ohio also. What part of Ohio are you in? I live in Westerville, a suburb of Columbus. So knowing that it's okay for the colors and lines to blend together, I don't feel that need that it has to be perfect. That's a wonderful thing about crafting and homemade, is it's not expected to look perfect. We can make it look good with taking some of that pressure off of us to be perfect. Carol, hello from Minnesota. Wow, we have people from all over the states. Go ahead and share again, or for the first time if you haven't already. I think everybody could enjoy some creative therapy tonight. So let's get as many people on as we can. How many of you have ever done the no-line watercoloring? Have any of you tried it? Okay, I dampened the flowers with the tip of my aqua painter, and now I'm just dabbing color in those spots and letting the water spread the ink. Remember too that once an area dries, you can go back in and add more color. You could add more detail to the dresses. We could add more color to the flowers, perhaps some deeper tone. And this is, what am I working with? Blushing Bride. I should have said that. Blushing Bride and soft sea foam for the leaves and stems. I'm adding this Blushing Bride ink now, just dabbing it on those areas I've made wet. Has anybody watching done this technique? Fran, you've tried it, did not do very well. We'll need to try again with the new paper. Yes, I can honestly say that this afternoon, trying it on both our old watercolor paper and this new watercolor paper, it is much different. It feels much different. Our old paper had even more texture to it. This watercolor paper still is thick and has that nice texture, but more subtle texture to it. Not such deep crevices and bumps like the old one. So definitely give it a try with this new one. Now these flowers on this side have dried, so you can see I'm going to go back in and put a little more color, and because it's dry, or most parts are dry, the ink isn't spreading quite as much, so I can add bits of ink and it's going to hold more of the color. Shanda, I would love to see you try it. I always thought you'd well, you were a stamper long before me, I think, Shanda. But I always thought you had really a nice technique and clever stamping. So I'd love to see what all of you do. I hope that I inspire you tonight. And I definitely hope more than anything that you share what you've done. And of course, I showed you what I was trying to do and went in the trash. I'm trying to find my other one here. No, I don't know where the other one went. So, you know, this one that I did was just my third attempt, and it's not, the little girl especially, I had a little trouble with. But, you know, keep trying, keep plugging away like I am. Okay, so now that I feel that this is pretty much dry, I don't see any really wet spots, I'm going to go in and do the skin tone. Now the skin tone was a little tricky for me, I'll admit, because petal pink is the closest ink color that I think we have to a skin color, but it does need to be kind of diluted for if I'm supposedly painting images of my own daughters with our light skin tones. So once again, go in. I'm going to do the arms of the little girl first, and I'm trying not to touch the Highland Heather, that purple I've already put on. I'm going to dilute this a little bit by mixing it with water instead of just taking it from that puddle of ink. Okay, and I'm just going to let that soak in. I'm going to then do the legs, and again I'm going to try not to touch, because you can see what my mistake was here. I'm going to try not to touch. I also gave the dress more drying time by going to other parts of the picture, so that will help me as well. And then same thing up here. And because I'm using the petal pink for the light skin tone, you don't necessarily have to clean off the tip of the aqua painter in between, because I know I want it that light. Adding a little more water here, trying to not get too close to those other images I've already watercolored. If they touch a little bit and it starts blending, that's perfectly fine. That's what watercoloring is all about. But I'm going to try to minimize that as I'm doing the arms and legs. Okay, pretty good, huh? Maybe do the light skin tone before the darker colors. That might, yeah, I can see that. That's a good suggestion, Fran. I didn't think of it that way. I guess I saw the dress as the focal point and just went for it. But that's probably a really good idea to do the lightest colors, just like we learned when we were in preschool and kindergarten and first grade. Color with your lightest crayon first and then add the darkers. Good tip. Thanks for offering that tip. I appreciate it. I'm going to use the soft suede for the hair. I noticed this girl has a little bow there too. I just now noticed might be able to go back in, like say on this first one, and just put a little loop and tail there to show a bow. Okay. Whoops. There we go. So I'm going to put, oh, I forgot to do the faces. I'm going to wet with water the little girl's hair. I'm going to do the same thing to the big girl. I never really called my girls older and younger. It was big girl and little girl. That's nice and moist, so I'll drop some of the soft suede ink in. Hoping those dresses will be real nice and dry because I want to show you, whoops, going back in and, there we go, going back in and adding a little detail. But I want to make sure they're nice and dry first. And I would highly suggest as well that when, if you want to color the background, wait till your whole thing, your whole picture, all the images are good and dry. Go back, maybe pick up another project or something, or go have a cup of coffee and come back down and add the other color in the background. Okay, I know I want to come back in with some of that. I now am going to pull in some Sahara sand, and I'm going to use it exactly for that, sand. So I'm going to, I got a little bristle or something right there. There we go. So I'm just going to fill in with some water here. I don't know what I picked up. And I'm going to go a little bit above the lines that were stamped there, and in and around the flowers and the stems and leaves a little bit. Now I'm going to use some of that Sahara sand and let that color spread a little bit. I have to admit, I really like doing this. It makes me feel like a real artist. I know I'm not a real artist. I'm a crafter. There's a big difference to me. And I've always admired artists. So when I can do something like this that makes me feel like I have artistic ability, not just crafting ability, really is fun for me. Okay, so what do you think? What do you think? I can see, number one, that I need to go back in with the faces, especially the little girl. There's more of the little girl's face showing. I'll put that image here so you get a better idea. And sometimes I have found myself even referring to that picture of the finished image there to see where some of that detail comes into play. Okay, I'm much happier with the arms and legs on both of them this time. But Fran, I'm going to remember that tip for next time to do the arms and legs first, perhaps. I do want to go back in right now and add some of the details, a little more detail to those dresses. So I'm not going to re-wet it so much as I am going to just put some strokes in. If you feel like you do want to re-wet it, go ahead. That's, well, now I am, but that's okay. But you see what I mean? You can just add some of those details in. do it like that, or you can go back over everything. Put some water on it, and then drop more ink on. Marty Blair, is she on tonight? She's another one that's pretty, let's see. I don't see if Marty's on tonight, but she's another one that I think is really has a nice artistic flair to her works, to the point where I wonder if she studied art or she just naturally has the eye for it. Fran, that is a good suggestion too. You can even add more detail like that with the blends. I can even let the dresses dry another time and do the very same thing. Set that aside so I don't get it. You know, just pick up the ink and add some detail like that. Okay. And as long as you're not putting on too much water at one time, or you're making sure that you give it enough drying time between layers, you can keep doing that. Even here, adding more ink to one side kind of makes it appear as if the sun is coming from the left, and so the dark side is shining. Oh, thanks, Shanda. Marty went to the Cincinnati School for Creative and Performing Arts for her art. I had no idea. No wonder. I mean, because I really see that in her. And even just, you know, she talks about, you know, add this this embellishment here because it balances out things, and really like that. Oh, Fran, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, when you're working with blends, do light first. Okay. Got some great tips there for us, Fran. All right, I'd say I'm pretty much done. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. Add her bow here. Well, thanks, Shanda. I learned something new about Marty tonight. I'm glad you were here to answer that question, because I was in the back of my head, I was thinking, I got to remember to message Marty and ask her. I decided I want to add, make the hair a little darker. Emily's hair was always a little lighter. Andrea's was a little darker brown. I'd say nowadays, as adults, it's probably really about the same for both of them. Okay, what do you think? How did I do? Hi, Shar, welcome. We've been trying some no-line watercoloring. Okay, this is my sample. I've tried no-line watercoloring today for the first time. Turned out pretty good, but I would say the second attempt at the very same is much better. Now I have my soft seafoam card base ready, and I have a layer of the, what did I use? Sahara Sand cardstock to mount my watercolor paper on. But before I do that, I'm going to, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, you know, we're not gonna sit here and wait for it to dry. I don't need to be wasting your time, but I'm going to let this dry really well, and then maybe in half hour or so I'll come back down and put some blue sky in there. But I just want to make sure it's very dry before I do that. I will tell you, if you ever want to speed up the process, you could go in with the heat tool and do that. But when you do that, please keep in mind, You don't want to have water puddled on your paper. If you have water puddled on the paper, what I would do is, this is not a paper towel or tissue, but say for example, I wanted to speed up the drying with my heat tool, but there was a puddle on the hair, puddle of water. I would just touch the corner of a tissue or paper towel to that and pull up some of that excess water before I go in with the heat tool. Otherwise, it could blow, the heat tool could blow that puddle outside of the image. And then there's not a whole lot you can do to fix that up unless you let it dry and blend and blend and blend the background and all that. So that is my suggestion. If it's just damp and you want to speed up the drying process, that's great. But if you see puddles of water, just dab the corner of a paper towel or tissue and pull up some of that excess water that has puddled. Okay, I promise that I will finish the background, put the blue background on. I think I'm going to use Pool Party. I pulled that. I'm going to soften that down with a little Pool Party in the color. Another great color for the sky might be Balmy Blue, a little bit brighter. But I promise I will finish that this evening, and then I will put, excuse me, put my card together so that you can see the finished card when I share this video, and also put it on my blog post in the next few days. Oh, I think you are so right, Char. It does remind me also of that stamp we used to have with the people by the sea, the children by the sea, or was it children and parents? I forget. But yes, I remember working that on a project with that with my upline. Before she was my upline, I was just a stamper customer then, not a stamping demonstrator.